Morning, everybody. So in the last class, we have talked about actually the congenital glaucomas and developmental glaucomas and its management. To recapitulate a little about it, congenital glaucomas, they are being divided into true glaucomas, developmental glaucomas, and juvenile glaucomas. Okay. True glaucomas, normally they occur, the pressure is raised in the intrauterine life of the individual. So the child is born with glaucoma. And infantile glaucoma, suppose if the glaucoma occurs between 3 years to 15 years. So then it is actually infantile glaucoma. So up to 3 years, up to the first birthday, and 3 to 15, actually it can be a developmental glaucoma. Okay. So the commonest symptoms, actually, these people they present with are the child is brought to the ophthalmologist by the parents with the complaint, actually, that the child is not able to see the light and it hides its head or eyes underneath the pillow, buries his head underneath the pillow, and there will be lacrimation and hazy corneas and all these things, actually, they come with. And the commonest symptoms are the photophobia, which is caused, and the lacrimation, which is caused by actually the irritation of the corneal nerves. And secondly, hazy cornea can also be occur, and the size of the cornea also will increase, and the size of the eyeball as a whole also will increase, giving an appearance of bullseye or ophthalmos, or it is otherwise known as hydrophthalmos because it is due to the accumulation of watery-like fluid that is aqueous in the globe, and that's the reason actually it is also called hydrophthalmos. So these are the symptoms, actually, the patient, the child may be brought for. And when you examine, actually, the patient will have to be examined under general anesthesia only. So you see the diameter of the cornea. Normal diameter of the cornea in the infant is around 10.5 millimeters. Suppose if it is around 13 millimeters, it's definitely of glaucoma, congenital glaucoma. And if it is more than actually 16 millimeters, the prognosis is very, very poor in these cases. So second thing is actually the anterior segment examination we'll try to do with a handheld slit lamp, and the intraocular pressure is measured with you have actually Perkins applanation tonometer and also the tono pen. These are the two things actually we take. And the fundus examination will have to be done with a direct ophthalmoscope because the patient cannot get seated near the slit lamp, and we cannot see with the 90D lens and all these things. And another thing is actually the gonioscopy will have to be done to assess the angle of the gonioscope, the angle of the anterior chamber. This is done with a Coeki's lens and a general anesthesia. So after arriving at a diagnosis of actually this thing, there are management is essentially surgical, and sometimes actually to reduce the intraocular pressure prior to the surgery, we may give some medication starting with timolol manual 0.5% 1 drop twice daily. And we do either a goniotomy or a trabeculotomy. These videos you have already seen. And suppose if these two things actually they are not, doesn't yield good result. In such conditions, a combination of trabeculotomy with a trabeculectomy and sometimes in recalcitrant cases, we may use actually glaucoma artificial devices. So any glaucoma, actually, the diagnosis depends upon a combination of clinical signs. And the first and foremost is changes in the optic nerve head. And second thing is an abnormality in visual field, which is irreversible. And essentially, usually, frequently, it is a rise in intraocular pressure, but not invariably. Okay. And primary open glaucoma is made by at least 2 of these 3 signs. They must be present to call it actually glaucoma. primary open-angle glaucoma. Types of glaucoma is, as I have already mentioned, is based on the status of the angle of the anterior chamber. In acute and subacute primary angle closure, the secondary glaucomas, the presence of raised intraocular pressure is sufficient for the diagnosis of glaucoma along with other signs of angle closure. So the changes in the optic nerve head, so the normal cup disc ratio is around 0.3 to 1. The symmetry of CD ratio in between these two eyes, if it is more than 0.2, it is suggestive of actually a glaucomatous change in the optic nerve head. And a localized notch or thinning of neuroretinal rim. Neuroretinal rim is nothing but actually the space between the disc margin and also the cup margin. Normally it is pink in color. So the thickness of neuroretinal rim is more actually in the inferior region. ISNT rule, that's what we call. Then the superior, and then the nasal, and then the temporal. The temporal margin is very, very thin when compared to the other regions. So a localized notch or thinning of neuroretinal rim is suggestive of actually a glaucoma. An enlarged CD ratio of more than 0.5 in the vertical axis is suggestive. Pallor of neuroretinal rim is another thing. And superficial hemorrhages over the disc is definitely a pathognomonic sign of glaucoma, especially in normotensive glaucoma. And what we see is actually sometimes a bearing of the vessels, overpass of the central vessels, and nasal pushing of the vessels. All these things they are seen. Parapapillary atrophy is also seen in these cases. Visual field defects, normally they are seen actually in the Jerram's area, 10 to 25 degrees from the fixation, and they correlate actually with the abnormality seen in the optic nerve head. So these are various these things actually we come to it later. So diagnosis of glaucomatous field defect actually on static perimetry. Visual field loss in glaucoma is considered significant when glaucoma hemifield test is abnormal. So it will be seen actually on the printout of the fields. 3 contiguous non-edge points on the pattern deviation plot within Jerram's area. The probability of less than 5% being seen in normal population, one of which should have a probability of less than 1%. The corrected pattern deviation, standard deviation, should have a probability of less than 5% confirmed on 2 consecutive tests. And glaucoma field test, it is nothing but actually it compares the sensitivity of 5 cluster points above and below the horizontal midline, which resembles nerve fiber bundle patterns. This type of loss is very common in glaucomas, and usually the loss is in both the spheres actually, above and below the horizontal line. It is asymmetrical. Analysis is abnormal if one or more of the 5 regions demonstrate asymmetry across the horizontal line beyond the 1% probability level for normal population values. Borderline, if the asymmetry is within 1% of probability levels for all 5 regions, at least 2 such fields plotted on different occasions are required before a diagnosis of glaucoma is made. Usually, whenever a patient is asked to do the fields test, the second test, there will definitely be a far more improvement than the first test, because he gets used to the button for which actually you will have to press when you see actually a focus, a threshold which is focused onto the glaucoma field, onto the field of the Humphrey Visual Field Analyzer. And the hand-eye coordination also will improve in these cases. Okay, these are various these things, superior and inferior nasal steps. So this is superior and inferior nasal steps, and this is an arcade scotoma with the nasal step, and this is a double arcade scotoma, an advanced field defect with a temporal island levova. So this is again a nasal step, superior and nasal, inferior, and arcade scotoma with nasal step, inferior nasal step. So angle of the anterior chamber, we have already seen actually the various structures, root of iris, anterior most of ciliary body, scleral spur will be there, trabecular meshwork, anterior and posterior trabecular meshwork. And Schwalbe's line, actually, it is nothing but actually the termination of the descemet membrane of the cornea. And we have also seen there are a lot of classification to classify or grade the angle of the anterior chamber, such as Schaeffer's, Shee's classification and all these things. So Schaeffer's classification, we have already seen that the grade 4, it is 15 to 45 degrees. The angle is wide open and the chance of closure in this case are very, very nil. And the structures seen are from Schwalbe's line to ciliary body. And in grade 3, we have actually 20 to 35 degrees angle width, and it's an open angle again, and the chance of closure are nil. And from Schwalbe's line to scleral spur, all the structures actually you will be able to see. And grade 2, it is 20 degrees. It is 20 degrees. So it's a moderately narrow angle, and there is possibility of the closure of the angle in case there are certain precipitative factors which occur. And the structures we see are from Schwalbe's line to trabecular meshwork. And grade 1, the angle width is at 10 degrees, and the configuration is very, very narrow, and high chances of closure are there. Only Schwalbe's line will be seen in these cases. And grade 0 is angle width is 0 degrees, and it is closed, and chance of closure is already closed, and none of the angle structures they are seen. Okay. So if you classify, if you come to the classification of glaucomas, either it is divided into primary glaucomas, secondary glaucomas due to specific anomaly or diseases of the eye, and congenital and developmental glaucomas. Congenital and developmental glaucomas already we have seen, we have dealt with it in the last class. And primary glaucomas, again, they are divided into primary open angle glaucoma, primary angle closure glaucoma, primary mixed mechanism glaucoma. Primary adult glaucomas, open angle glaucoma, it is an adult onset and is bilaterally symmetrical disease, and it is usually characterized by optic disc cupping, visual field damage associated gonioscopically with an open angle and a rise in intraocular pressure. There is no systemic or ocular causes for rise of intraocular pressure in these cases. Okay. So it is also known as chronic simple glaucoma. It's characterized by slowly progressive rise of intraocular pressure, more than 21 millimeters of mercury, an open angle, characteristic disc changes as I have already mentioned, cupping, and specific visual field defects, already I have mentioned. And if you take actually the etiopathogenesis of the glaucoma, open angle, primary open angle glaucoma, it is the commonest form of in Caucasians and also the Africans. So the IOP in these cases is definitely raised. Sir, class level, sir. Family history will be there in most of the cases. Approximately the risk factor is about 10% for the siblings of a patient who had actually primary open angle glaucoma, and about 4% for the offsprings of the patients who had a primary open angle glaucoma. It has actually polygenic inheritance. Approximately a dozen loci are identified, but only 3 loci they are cloned. And they are myocilin, optineurin, and WD repeat domain 36 or WDR 36. And age usually it's about after 40 years of age, the incidence is more, and race is more common and earlierly detected and more severe in blacks when compared to the whites. Okay. Myopias, the incidence of actually primary open angle glaucoma is more in case of myopics rather than emetropes and also hypermetropes. So corneal, central corneal thickness, it is actually now considered as an independent risk factor. And the diabetes, so the diabetes actually is mostly seen in diabetes. Diabetes per se, it may not cause actually the primary open angle glaucoma, but association with diabetes is more in a case of primary open angle glaucoma. Cigarette smokers, they are supposed to have more incidence of primary open angle glaucoma when compared to non-smokers. And high blood pressure. So this is again actually the primary open angle glaucoma is mostly seen in case of in hypertensive small when compared to the people who are non-hypertensive, and nocturnal dip of actually the blood pressure when hypertension is managed with a nocturnal dose of actually antihypertensives. So this can give rise to a low perfusion pressure to the optic nerve head and thereby causing damage to the optic nerve head. So normal diastolic perfusion pressure is if it is less than 55 millimeters. So normally how we calculate is diastolic blood pressure minus IOP. So this is actually diastolic perfusion pressure. If the diastolic perfusion pressure is less than 55 millimeters, there is every chance of actually the damage occurring to the optic nerve head. And thyrotoxicosis. In case of Graves' ophthalmopathy, the chance of actually the primary open angle glaucoma, it is more when compared to the euthyroid cases. And corticosteroid responsiveness. So the corticosteroid responsiveness, there are high responders, moderate responders, and low responders. So the high responders, it's only 5% of the population. Suppose in high responders, if a local corticosteroid drops, actually they are instilled for about, say, nearly about 6 weeks. So the chance of an increase in the intraocular pressure is seen in these people. Okay. So next, if you take actually the pathogenesis of primary open angle glaucoma, so the pathogenesis increase in IOP is due to decrease in aqueous outflow. No. చెప్పండి ఎవరండి చెప్పండి దయాల్ నగర్ దాటిన తర్వాత రామాలయానికి వెళ్ళిపోయారా? లేదు, వెనక్కి రావాలండి. వెనకాతలకు వస్తే మీరు అలా వెనకాతలకు వచ్చేస్తుంటే మీకు లెఫ్ట్ హ్యాండ్ సైడ్ ఏమో భీమసేన అపార్ట్మెంట్స్ అని ఉంటుంది. భీమసేన అపార్ట్మెంట్స్ అండి. నేను క్లాస్లో ఉన్నాను, మీకు నెంబర్ ఇస్తాను, నెంబర్ ఫోన్ చేస్తారా? 9440 339 నా వైఫ్ ఉంటుంది అక్కడ, మాట్లాడు. 559 చెప్తుంది. ఓకే. So sorry for the interruption. This phones, I don't know, I think I'll put it in silent mode. So it is because of decreased aqueous outflow due to failure of aqueous outflow pump mechanism. So what we see actually in these cases is thickening and sclerosis of the trabecular meshwork and faulty coagulation tissue. And secondly, narrowing of the Schlemm's canal, intratrabecular spaces will also be there, and deposition of amorphous material in the juxtacanalicula space, and collapse of the Schlemm's canal, and absence of giant vacuoles in the cells lining it. These are the things actually which we see in these cases. So the cause for actually all these changes, they say it's actually autoimmune because of we see immunoglobulins which are increased and antibodies which are seen actually by histochemistry. So these things they point to that actually it can be because of the immunological mechanisms. Okay. So if you take actually the epidemiology of the primary open-angle glaucoma, it affects in 1 in 100 of the 1 in 100 of general population above 40 years, and 1/3 of all glaucomas, they are primary open-angle glaucomas. So the prevalence in various ethnic groups is different, and when compared to the primary angle pressure glaucoma, in Europeans, Africans, and Hispanics, primary open-angle glaucoma is 5 times more common when compared to primary angle pressure glaucoma. Mongolians, primary open-angle glaucoma is only seen in 1/3 of total glaucoma cases. PSCC 3 times more common in Mongolians. Urban Chinese primary angle pressure glaucoma is 2 times more common when compared to primary open-angle glaucoma. In Indians, actually, the incidence and prevalence is almost equal, both in primary open-angle glaucoma and primary angle pressure glaucoma. Okay, so if you in 15% of the patients, an IOP of less than 21 millimeters on repeated readings associated with all other signs of such as field changes and also disc changes will be present, and this type of glaucoma is called actually normotensive glaucoma. Individuals with greater than 21 millimeters of mercury of IO intraocular pressure without any changes in the disc and also the field changes, it is called as ocular hypertension. Patients with optic nerve head changes suggestive of glaucoma, but without raised intraocular pressure or visual field changes, this is known as a primary open-angle glaucoma suspect. The associated conditions of primary open-angle glaucoma, one is a high myopia, and secondly, a Fuchs endothelial dystrophy, a retinitis pigmentosa, central retinal vein occlusion, primary retinal detachment, and diabetes mellitus. Okay. So the clinical features, if you take actually the clinical features of primary open-angle glaucoma, the onset is insidious, and mostly the patients, they are asymptomatic till such time that on routine examination, we examine the patient and find actually the glaucomatous optic atrophy or glaucomatous cupping in advanced stages. And the patient also will not come to us till such time that actually there is a significant visual and field loss for the particular individual. Okay, so non-specific complaints such as headache and eye ache, they are seen and frequently seen, and these people they may frequently change their glasses, presbyopic glasses. They will have the difficulty for the near vision and also for the reading. The simple reason being the raised intraocular pressure, it causes pressure over the ciliary nerves and ciliary body, thereby actually hampering the accommodative process. And that's the reason actually these people, they complain, they change their presbyopic glasses often. Some may notice, an intelligent and an observant patient may notice actually a scotoma, an unseen area in the visual field, especially inferior visual field. And in advanced cases, there will be a difficulty in dark adaptation. Normally, we get adapted when you go into the dark from the sunlight in about 2 to 3 minutes, but these people, they take a long time. So the primary open-angle glaucoma, rise of IOP is more than 21 millimeters of mercury, and presence of optic nerve head changes and visual field changes and defects in the nerve fiber layer, all these things will be there. At least 2 of these 3 signs must be present to make a diagnosis of primary open-angle glaucoma in the presence of normal open angle confirmed by gonioscopy. You'll have to do a gonioscopy also, and also see the systemic examination. You must exclude actually any cause for rise in intraocular pressure, gonioscopically or in the systemic causes which cause actually. The IOP, intraocular pressure, normally we measure it with Chiard's indentation tonometer or a Goldman appellation tonometer. This is actually a gold standard. So I have already shown you actually how we take actually intraocular pressure with Goldman's appellation tonometer. And Chiar's indentation tonometer, I will talk about it in few slides to come. Initially, the patient may not have actually a rise in intraocular pressure directly. So there can be actually a diurnal variation. Normally the intraocular pressure is more in the morning when compared to the evening because of the cortisol levels, the diurnal cortisol levels. And if you take actually the diurnal variation, so we have actually 4 graphs. One is a normal slight morning rise, and second one is morning rise seen in about 20% of the POAC patients, and number C is actually afternoon rise seen in about 25% of the cases, and biphasic variation seen in about 55% of the cases in case of POAC. So diurnal variation is important because this is important, number one, to diagnose actually the primary open angle glaucoma, and secondly also to rather instill the anti-glaucoma medication at the particular point when actually the intraocular pressure is raised. Okay, so IOP is more than 21 millimeters of mercury on more than one occasion. Diurnal variation, if it is more than 5, it is suspicious. If it is more than 8, it's definite of actually primary open angle glaucoma. Asymmetry of IOP of more than 5 millimeters of mercury in both the eyes. Suppose if in one eye is 13 and the other eye is 18. So the other eye actually with the 88 millimeters of mercury is likely to go in for actually primary open angle glaucoma. One should be very careful. So the optic nerve head changes. So the fundus examination will have to be done in all these cases to note actually the optic nerve head changes. So what we do is normally we will have to evaluate a stereoscopic view of optic nerve head, optic disc, with a contact or non-contact lens. Usually we use 78 diopters lens or 90D lens, and with a slit lamp biomicroscope. Okay, and recording and documentation of these changes is very, very important. Recordings can be done by serial hand drawings, photography and photogrammetry, and confocal scanning laser trabecular topography, that is Heidelberg's retinal tomograph. In association tomograph, this is accurate, and OCT is another thing. OCT glaucoma actually, it is another more sensitive this thing, and scanning laser, polarimetry, and nerve fiber layer laser. So these are the things which are needed, or which can help us actually in documenting the various optic nerve head changes. So the patient will have to be followed lifelong. So if we have actually the documentation, the old optic nerve head pictures, so that can definitely give you an idea as to the progressing of the open angle glaucoma or worsening of the open angle glaucoma. So the various changes we see in case of open angle glaucoma in the optic nerve head are early glaucomatous changes and late glaucomatous changes. So vertically oval cup, normally the superior and inferior notch actually the disc that will be initially affected, and CD ratio of more than 0.5 per 0.5. Asymmetry, suppose if we take actually the compare the optic nerve cup disc ratio in both the eyes. Suppose if one eye it is actually 0.5, another eye is only 0.3 normal. So there is a difference of more than 0.2. We'll have to suspect actually a glaucomatous cupping. And narrowing, notching, or pallor of the neuroretinal rim. The healthiness of actually neuroretinal rim is very, very important in case of glaucoma. Okay, and disc hemorrhages and abnormalities of the blood vessels suggestive of acquired enlargement of the cup. So disc hemorrhages either on the disc or in the periphery of the disc, and bearing of the blood vessels, and nasal pushing of the blood vessels, niching, notching. All these things actually they are suggestive of actually the optic nerve head change. Atrophy of the retinal nerve fibers, which is adjacent to the optic disc, and it is actually examined with a red-free light and a slit lamp, and it is a wedge-like defect where actually you see the blood vessels naked. Advanced glaucomatous changes, you have actually marked cupping 0.7 to 0.9, thinning of neuroretinal rim will be there, nasal pushing of the retinal vessels will be there, and discontinuation of vessels at the margin and violating sign will be present. Pulsations of the retinal arterioles at the disc margin is pathognomonic of actually glaucoma, and laminar dot sign is another thing actually. You see the vacuole-like appearance of the disc, which goes up to the disc margin. That's actually laminar dot sign. And finally, glaucomatous optic atrophy. So the whole disc is white in color, and the nasal pushing of the vessels will be there. And clinically, the patient will not have actually any vision. So open angle, the fields actually depends on defects in the nerve fiber layer. The nerve fiber layers on the nasal side, the superior radiating fibers and inferior radiating fibers they join the disc. And from the macula to the disc, there is this papillomacular bundle. And over that, actually, you have superior arcading fibers and inferior arcading fibers. And a median raphe will also be there. Okay, so this is superior radiating fibers, which actually inferior radiating fibers, and arcading fibers, inferior arcading fibers, papillomacular bundle, and this is median raphe. Okay, this is actually, that's how these things are. Anatomical basis of visual field changes, it depends upon actually the retinal nerve fibers and also arrangement of retinal nerve fibers within the optic nerve head. So for assessing the visual field, we have different methods. One is a confrontation technique. Suppose if we don't have a Humphrey visual field or any visual field analyzer, so in the examination on the bedside, actually you can as well do a confrontation test. Okay, so how we do it when you come to the clinicals, we'll try to demonstrate. Okay, and secondly, we have static and these static perimetries and this thing, and we commonly use this Humphrey visual field analyzer. The various defects we see actually in case of open angle glaucoma, the first and foremost is a generalized isopter contraction, but this generalized isopter contraction is not specific of actually the specific of glaucoma. It is seen in other conditions also. So bearing of the blind spot, there will be incurving actually of the peripheral field just inside the blind spot, and this is also not very specific of actually glaucoma. There are a lot of cases, a lot of other conditions where you see this bearing of the blind spot. And small wing-shaped paracentral scotoma, the blind spot will be there, and paracentral scotoma either in the superior hemisphere or in the inferior hemisphere it can occur. And this is the first typical changes in the visual fields of an open angle glaucoma. Later on, the paracentral scotoma, it gets joined to actually the blind spot, and giving rise to a sedal scotoma. And later on, as the disease progresses, there can be arcade or Jedem scotoma, one half of actually the hemisphere actually it is involved. And ring or double arcade scotomas will also be seen. And Royne's central nasal stir and peripheral field defects. And finally, the central vision will be left over, and that's because the papillomacular bundle, they are very resistant actually to the glaucomatous damage. And finally, the temporal island of the vision will be left. So initially, papillomacular bundle also, after all these changes, papillomacular bundle may also get affected, and the central vision may also be lost. The patient, he was seeing like a tubular vision, that may also be get extinguished, and the temporal island of vision will be there, and that also will be lost, and the extinction of say the perception of light and projection of rays in these individuals. Okay, so the various investigations we do in these cases are one is tonometry. As I have said, actually, you will have to take intraocular pressure in these cases, either with Chiari indentation tonometer or Glauberman applanation tonometer or the tonopen, or Perkins applanation tonometer in case of children, or the people who are being examined under general anesthesia, you will have to see. And diurnal variation of these cases is important both for the diagnosis and the management of glaucoma. So in case of, suppose if there is a diurnal variation difference of around 5 millimeters, it is suggestive. If it is more than 8 millimeters, it is confirmative of actually a primary open angle glaucoma. And we'll have to know, and when exactly the IOP is rising or touching the top, so that you can aim your treatment to get affected at the particular time. Okay, so that the IOP will be reduced at the particular. Gonioscopy is most important. We can do either with a single mirror gonioscope or a 2-mirror gonioscope or 4-mirror gonioscope or Goldman 3-mirror gonioscope if one does this thing. And you will have to differentiate whether it's an open angle or an angle closure. Our documentation of optic disc changes, I have already mentioned that there are various procedures, various devices we have actually for documenting them. This is very important because the open angle, primary open angle glaucoma patient, in effect, for any glaucoma patient, he will have to be actually treated and followed up all through the life. And documentation of optic slit lamp examination. Slit lamp examination actually, it may not reveal anything initially. The anterior segment may be quite normal. Only in late stages, actually, you will have the pupil is sluggish in reaction, and a hazy cornea may be present. And nerve fiber layer and laser, it gives us actually the idea as to what nerve fibers layer, in which quadrant actually the nerve fiber layer is defective. Suppose if we can institute the treatment, this can be reversed. And visual fields, Humphrey visual fields is the commonest done nowadays. And secondly, we have actually provocative tests. These provocative tests actually we use them in case of glaucoma suspect. So the commonly used provocative test is actually water drinking test. So after 8 hours fast, we take actually the basal intraocular pressure. We ask the patient actually to drink nearly about 1 liter of water, and then every 15 minutes actually we take the intraocular pressure. So the intraocular pressure rises up to 30 minutes, and later on it comes to fall down, even in case of normal and also glaucoma cases. Suppose if there is a difference of actually more than 8 millimeters from the base IOP, that indicates that actually this provocative test is positive. Okay. So I have told you this is Chiari's indentation tonometer, and this is we hold with the handles, and this is the plumber and the plunger. Sorry, this is the plunger, and this is the foot plate. This is foot plate. Okay, here you can see this is a foot plate. And here, this is the cornea, we indented, okay? We indented, this is the plunger. And this plunger actually is attached to a needle which reflects onto, which moves on a scale actually. So when you indent, you show you see actually a reading. So there are pre-estimated tables. So depending upon the actually deflection, you see it and you come to a conclusion what is the pressure of the particular individual. So the Chiari's indentation tonometer, the advantage is actually it is portable, and you can take it to the camps and you can see a lot of you can do the intraocular pressure in camps. But the disadvantage is actually the scleral rigidity actually it comes into this thing, and that causes problem. And this is actually the Goldman applanation tonometry. I have already shown you the video, how we do it and all. And so this is gonioscopy. Normally, when you focus actually the light, it goes direct through the pupil, and the angle will not be seen here. Okay. So whereas when you place a prism, so this gets reflected from the mirror like this, and this will be getting focused into the angle. So that's how actually we see the angle. Okay. The gonioscopy. This is a gonioscope, most likely a single mirror gonioscope. And the various structures we see: iris process, scleral spurs, lens, canal, trabecular mesh, and small disc line. And this is various stages of actually glaucomatous cupping. This is normal and early. And finally, this is a glaucomatous optic atrophy. Okay. And diagnosis, it is labeled when rise in intraocular pressure is associated with the definitive glaucomatous optic disc cupping and also visual field defects. So next we have actually glaucoma suspect or ocular hypertension. If IOP is constantly more than 21 millimeters of mercury, but no optic disc or visual field changes, in such cases we call it as ocular hypertension. So these patients monitored carefully once in 6 months by an ophthalmologist and treated as a case of primary open-angle glaucoma in the presence of the following criteria. Suppose if the diagonal variation difference is more than 8 millimeters of mercury and a positive water drinking test and asymmetry of cupping of more than 0.2 and associated with splinter hemorrhages over the disc or the margins of the disc and with a strong family history of glaucoma in the siblings, suppose if it is there. And IOP constantly, if it is more than 30 millimeters of mercury also, we treat it as a POAC. And if it is associated with myopia and diabetes mellitus and pigmentary changes in the anterior chamber, then also we treat it as this thing. And the other one is actually normal tensor glaucoma. Here, actually, the typical glaucomatous cupping with or without visual field changes, usually with visual field changes, but in association with an intraocular pressure of normal range or low intraocular pressure. This is due to, as we have already seen, that's because of chronic low vascular perfusion of the optic nerve head. And patient is treated as a case of primary open-angle glaucoma, and we have to reduce actually the intraocular pressure into low teens. And treatment actually in these cases is unsatisfactory. So open-angle glaucoma, so management of open-angle glaucoma, so baseline evaluation of these cases is important, and a folder must be given for the patient, and because these patients actually, they are patients lifelong and they will have to get follow-up done every 3 to 6 months, okay. Normally we take intraocular pressure and also see the fundus and try to have the documentation of the optic nerve head and everything, retinal pictures and visual fields also we take and we keep the pictures, okay. So the visual acuity is estimated every time, and slit lamp examination of the anterior segment is important, and intraocular pressure by Goldman Epinephrine tonometer, and optic disc evaluation and extent of the damage is done with actually the contact or non-contact lenses, 78D or 90D lenses, and gonioscopy at least will have to be done once in 2 years to assess whether an open angle is going for a closed angle. And visual field charting, normally we do it every 6 months. Associated risk factors like coronary artery disease and diabetes mellitus, if they are present, actually we'll have to find out. Over the years, should be these documentation should be available for proper management. Target pressure is one thing. For every patient of actually glaucoma, we rather come to a conclusion of a target pressure. So it is different from individual to individual. Range of intraocular pressure between which glaucomatous damage is unlikely to progress. That is actually the target pressure. If the IOP is maintained less than 16 to 18 millimeters of mercury, it leads to the stabilization of POAC, and the further damage usually may not occur in case of primary open-angle glaucoma, but in case of actual normal tensor glaucoma, you will have to reduce it to the low teens. Okay. Unfortunately or fortunately, primary in glaucoma, the intraocular pressure is the only thing which we can alter and manage, and through that only we will be able to control the glaucomatous changes in the disc. Okay. So the treatment modalities, we have various treatment modalities. One is medical therapy, and second one is argon or diode laser therapy, or selective SLT is also there. And finally, the surgery, filtration surgery. So in basic principles of medical therapy of primary open-angle glaucoma, choose a single topical drug after considering patient's personal and medical practice. If initial drug is ineffective or is not tolerated by the patient, it should be replaced by another drug. If one drug is not sufficient to control the intraocular pressure, we rather use actually 2 or more drugs of different mechanism of action. Treatment options presently available can only lower the IOP, but they are not going to actually alter the glaucomatous damage which has already occurred. And beta-oxalol is another drug actually which increases the perfusion of the optic nerve head, and it is useful actually in normotensive glaucomas. And nerve protection by certain drugs like brimonidine, all these things, they are still under experimental age. No conclusive evidence is there. These are actually various drugs, and usually we start the patient nowadays with latanoprost, this thing. And topical beta blockers, timolol maleate is a non-selective beta blocker, and it is contraindicated actually in case of asthma, COPD, and cardiac problems, congestive heart failure, and all these things. Timolol maleate normally it is given in 0.25 to 0.5% solution twice daily. And beta-oxalol, it increases actually the perfusion pressure of the optic nerve head, blood supply optic nerve head. It is actually instead 0.25% twice daily. Levobunal, it is 0.25% to 0.5%, 1 to 2 times per day. So beta-oxalol actually it's a selective beta blocker, and it can be given in case of COPD in all these people. Pilocarpine had been actually the sheet anchor of the treatment of primary open-angle glaucoma, and nowadays we are not using it. We may use it actually as an adjunctive to the other management, other treatments, other drugs. It is available in the form of 1%, 2%, and 4% drops, and it's actually the duration of action is around 6 to 8 hours, and you will have to use it 3 to 4 times per day. Dorzolamide, estozolamide, all these things actually they can be. Estozolamide actually it's a oral drug or intravenous parenteral drug. Dorzolamide actually or brinzolamide, these things actually can be given as drops, 2% solution 2 to 3 times per day. Latanoprost, travoprost, all these things actually can be given. Latanoprost normally the common drug commonest we use. Unoprost, there are about 3-4 types of the prostaglandin. So it is actually 0.05% twice daily we give it, or once daily which is sufficient. Adrenergic drugs, epinephrine, dipephrine, eprapolinidine, clonidine, brimonidine, all these things, nowadays we are not using it. We start the treatment actually with the latanoprost and combine with the timolol maleate or beta-oxalol or dorzolamide. Rarely we go for actually brimonidine. So either we give actually a monotherapy for the individual with a single drug, the intraocular pressure may come normal, or combined therapy. Suppose if one drug is not sufficiently reducing the intraocular pressure, we may combine it with another drug of mechanism of action differently. And borocarbonic anhydrase inhibitors such as estozolamide, we can use them when we have actually an intraocular pressure more than 40 millimeters of mercury. And we have actually, suppose if the patient is not getting controlled with the maximum tolerable treatment, medical treatment, or suppose if the compliance is not proper, in such cases actually we may do actually trabeculoplasty, and argon or diode laser trabeculoplasty or selective laser trabeculoplasty can also be done. Argon laser or diode laser or selective, when IOP is uncontrolled despite maximum medical therapy, is considered as a primary therapy when there is non-compliance for medical therapy, as I already mentioned. Hypotensive effect is by increasing the outflow facilities And it lowers the IOP by about 8 to 10 millimeters of mercury in patients with medical therapy and 12 to 16 millimeters in patients who are not receiving medical treatment. So what we do is with an argon laser, we give actually 50 spots in the anterior half of the trabecular meshwork over a 180 degrees. Applied. This is actually given to coagulate the trabecular meshwork. Spot size is 50 microns at the junction of anterior and posterior trabecular meshwork. So these are actually the spots. This is a bigger one. And surgical therapy, the indications for surgical therapy. Whenever actually we ask you about the surgery, you'll have to first mention the indications, and next you'll have to say the anesthesia we give, and then the procedure, and finally the complications of the surgery. Okay, so the various indications for the management of POAC are uncontrolled glaucoma despite maximum medical therapy, non-compliance of medical therapy, and non-availability of ALT, and eyes with advanced disease. Trabeculectomy is a fistulated filtration surgery. So I'll show you actually this thing, video, how we do actually trabeculectomy, and later on we'll proceed to this thing. So this is actually a live video. that is actually a little about actually the trabeculectomy. I have fastened it because the time is, we don't have time. Tomorrow we take up the ocular hypertension, and also we are going to talk about actually the angle closure glaucoma and other things. Okay. Any doubts?